It started with a smirk, the kind of smirk that says, "Watch this, I'm about to make history." But history, as it turned out, had a different plan. The stage lights inside the packed auditorium glared down like judgmental eyes. Cameras clicked. The audience buzzed with that electric, uneasy energy that fills the air before something unexpected happens. It wasn't supposed to be a chaotic night. It was supposed to be a presidential-style town hall, calm and controlled. But with Donald Trump in the building, calm was never really on the menu. Jimmy Kimmel, who had been chosen to moderate the discussion, sat across from Trump with his usual half grin, that look that made people wonder if he was joking even when he wasn't. The topic for the night was leadership and the Constitution, a serious subject. But within minutes, the night took a turn no one could have scripted. Trump was restless. He fidgeted with the microphone, squinting at the teleprompter like it was a personal enemy. Every time Kimmel asked a pointed question, Trump's tone shifted, defensive, dismissive, and then increasingly irritated. "You know, Jimmy," Trump began, leaning forward as if to deliver breaking news. "A lot of people, smart people, the best people, they say I'm a genius, a very stable genius. You've probably heard that, right?" The audience chuckled nervously. Kimmel smiled politely. "Yes, I've heard you mention it once or twice." Trump took that as validation. "Exactly. So when you ask these gotcha questions, I just think, maybe you're jealous. Maybe you wish you had the same kind of brain, you know? Because, quite frankly, I've got one of the best brains. Everybody knows it." Laughter rippled through the crowd. Not the supportive kind, the awkward, "can't believe he said that" kind. Kimmel raised an eyebrow. "Well, Mr. President, tonight isn't about who has the best brain. It's about—" But Trump cut him off, his voice louder now. "No, no, no. I think it is about that, actually. You know, I get tired of all these so-called experts trying to make me look dumb. They say, 'Oh, Trump doesn't read.' Well, I read everything. I have a great memory. I passed every test they gave me, the best scores. They said they've never seen anything like it." Kimmel leaned back, pretending to jot notes on his card. "Is that the same test where you had to identify the picture of a lion?" The audience erupted in laughter. Trump froze. "That was a very hard test, okay? People don't understand. Not everyone can pass that." For a second, it looked like Kimmel might move on. He shuffled his cards, exhaled slowly, ready to steer the conversation back to something serious. But then Trump said it, the line that would go down in talk show history. "You know what, Jimmy? I'm tired of this. You think you're so smart? I demand an IQ test, right here, right now. Let's see who's really the genius." The crowd gasped. The challenge hung in the air like a grenade with a pulled pin. Kimmel blinked. "An IQ test? You're serious?" "Very serious," Trump said proudly, straightening his suit. "We'll bring out the doctors, the best doctors. They'll test both of us live. The American people will finally know who's smarter, the TV guy or the stable genius." A few audience members started clapping, unsure if it was real or another one of Trump's stunts. But the look on his face said everything. He meant it. Kimmel paused, trying not to laugh. He glanced at the producers offstage. The camera zoomed in on his expression, part disbelief, part delight. This was television gold, and he knew it. "Well, Mr. President," Kimmel said finally, setting his cards down with theatrical calm, "if you insist on a test, I think I can arrange something." Trump smiled triumphantly. "Good, make it quick. I don't need to study. I was born ready." Kimmel nodded. "Oh, I bet you were." The crowd was on edge, half expecting security to intervene, half expecting an impromptu spelling bee. Instead, Kimmel leaned forward, eyes locked on Trump like a teacher about to test a stubborn student. Before we bring in any experts, he said softly, let's just start with a basic one. A warm-up question, if you will. Trump crossed his arms, confident. Go ahead, ask me anything. Kimmel reached under his moderator desk and pulled out a crisp white sheet of paper. He held it up for the cameras, then walked toward Trump with deliberate slowness, milking the moment. This, Kimmel said, is one of the most important paragraphs in American history. Every president should know it by heart. Would you do us the honor of reading it aloud? Trump smirked. Easy. Give me that. The paper trembled slightly in his hand as the camera zoomed in. On it was printed the text of the First Amendment to the United States Constitution. He began to read. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof or abridging the freedom. A murmur rippled through the audience. Kimmel tilted his head. Trump squinted harder, his voice faltering. Or of the press, or the right of the people, peaceably, something, to assemble. A pause, silence. He looked up, clearly lost. And to petition the government for a redress of grievances? Kimmel blinked slowly. You done? Trump nodded quickly, handing back the paper. Nailed it. The crowd laughed again, louder this time, a mix of disbelief and amusement. Kimmel smiled thinly. Mr. President, that was the First Amendment, the foundation of free speech and democracy. Trump looked confused. Yeah, I know that. I just wanted to make sure everyone else did too. But his voice cracked on the last word. The momentary silence that followed was deafening, one of those rare times on live television when everyone knows they've just witnessed something extraordinary. That was the exact second the world realized. The self-proclaimed genius might have just challenged the wrong man on the wrong stage. And Jimmy Kimmel? He wasn't done yet, not even close. For a moment, nobody spoke. You could have heard a pin drop. Trump leaned back in his chair, trying to look composed, that tight smile plastered on his face like a man pretending not to hear laughter at his own expense. The crowd, though, couldn't hold it in. Laughter erupted, scattered at first, then swelling like a wave. Even some of Trump's own supporters in the audience chuckled nervously, unsure whether to clap or cringe. Jimmy Kimmel didn't gloat. He just stood there, holding that single sheet of paper, calm, collected, and with that unmistakable look of quiet triumph. The look of a man who knew he didn't have to say much more. Reality had already done the work for him. Thank you for that, Mr. President, Kimmel said, finally breaking the silence. That was enlightening. Trump's smile twitched. You're welcome. I'm sure nobody else here could have done better. It's a very difficult piece of text. A lot of people don't realize how complicated the Constitution is. Kimmel raised an eyebrow. You mean the First Amendment? Yeah, Trump replied quickly. It's tricky. A lot of people think they understand it, but they don't. Believe me, I've read all the amendments. I know them all. Some people don't even know how many there are. Kimmel looked at him, almost pitying. And how many are there? Trump froze. His eyes darted upward like he was counting something invisible. Many. There's quite a few. Probably more than people think. Maybe 25, maybe 30. But I know them, all of them. Some people don't even know how many there are. Kimmel looked at him, almost pitying. And how many are there? Trump froze. His eyes darted upward like he was counting something invisible. Many. There's quite a few. Probably more than people think. Maybe 25, maybe 30, but I know them, all of them. A few audience members covered their mouths. Kimmel pressed his lips together, trying not to smile. Close, he said. It's 27. Trump shrugged. That's what I said. Around that number. I was rounding. Right, Kimmel said, nodding slowly. Of course you were. The tension broke again. Laughter, applause, the crowd eating up every awkward second. Trump, visibly irritated now, leaned toward the mic. You think that's funny, Jimmy? You think this is some kind of joke? Kimmel tilted his head. It's a comedy show, Mr. President. I kind of have to. The audience roared. Trump's face flushed crimson. He reached for his water glass, took a sip, and then slammed it down harder than necessary. I'm not going to sit here and be disrespected by a talk show host. You know, a lot of people are saying you should be thanking me for even being here. Without me, you wouldn't have the ratings you do. Kimmel smiled. You're right, I do have to thank you. You've been great for comedy, kind of like a one-man writer's room. The laughter was thunderous this time. Even Kimmel's bandleader could be seen chuckling in the background. Trump turned away, muttering something under his breath. Unbelievable. These people don't appreciate genius when they see it. I built an entire empire. I was president. I know more about brains than the brain doctors. Kimmel blinked. Brain doctors? Yes, Trump said defensively. You know, the people who study brains, smart people. They all tell me they've never seen anything like my results. Kimmel leaned on the table, eyes glinting. And yet you just struggled to pronounce peaceably. The crowd erupted again. Trump's jaw tightened. It's a weird word. Nobody uses that word. I know other words, bigger words, like tremendous. Kimmel nodded seriously. Yes, tremendous is definitely bigger. The laughter nearly drowned out the rest of the segment. Trump's expression hardened, the way it always did when the cameras caught him losing control. The familiar storm was building, ego clashing with embarrassment, pride turning into deflection. You know, Jimmy, Trump said after a beat, this whole thing, it's rigged. The fake news will take that little moment and twist it. They'll say, oh, Trump didn't know the First Amendment. But I do. I love the First Amendment. Nobody loves free speech more than me. I use it all the time. Kimmel folded his arms. Yes, that's very clear. Trump continued, louder now, gesturing toward the cameras. And let me tell you, I've taken real tests, hard tests. Doctors said they've never seen anyone answer so fast. I got every question right. Elephant, person, woman, man, camera, TV. Perfect score. Nobody could believe it. Kimmel couldn't help but grin. That's impressive. Though I have to ask, do you still remember all those words? Of course, Trump said quickly. Elephant, man, woman, TV, camera. Kimmel leaned in, whispering just loud enough for the microphone. You missed one. No, I didn't. Yes, you did, Kimmel said, holding up a finger. You said them out of order. That's -1 point. The laughter rolled through the audience like thunder. Even the cameramen were shaking, struggling to keep their shots steady. Trump scowled. You think you're clever, don't you? Kimmel nodded. Sometimes, but not as clever as the stable genius, of course. For a moment, their eyes locked. Two entertainers, two egos, both used to command attention, but only one of them thriving in discomfort. Trump looked away first. You know what? You're jealous. You wish you were me. Everyone does. Actually, Kimmel said with a gentle shrug, I think I'll stick with being me. It seems a lot less stressful. The laughter and applause filled the studio again, but this time it wasn't just about comedy. There was something deeper in the air, the uneasy recognition that the night had shifted. What started as political theater had turned into something far more revealing, an unmasking. And it wasn't over. Because as Trump sat there, visibly fuming, trying to salvage his pride, Jimmy Kimmel was already planning his next move, a single question that would turn the entire showdown into one of the most unforgettable moments in live television history. He just needed to wait for the right moment. The cameras didn't stop rolling, not for a second. Every awkward breath, every twitch of Trump's jaw, every amused glance from Kimmel, it was all being streamed live to millions of viewers. The audience inside the studio could sense it too, that strange thrill that comes when you know you're watching something that's going to explode across every news feed and timeline by morning. Trump shifted in his seat, trying to regain control. His usual rhythm, the confident hand gestures, the exaggerated pauses, they all seemed slightly off now. For a man who had built a career on commanding the spotlight, this felt different. The spotlight wasn't his anymore. It was mocking him. Kimmel, on the other hand, was calm as ever. He didn't raise his voice or push too hard. He just let Trump dig himself deeper, one misplaced word at a time. "So," Kimmel began, flipping through his cue cards as though searching for something. "Since we're testing IQs tonight, why don't we try another one? A little something easier, maybe." Trump leaned back, smirking again. "Go ahead. I love tests. I always pass them. People don't talk about that enough. They only talk about the fake stuff. But I always pass." "Good," Kimmel said. "Then let's make this fun. I'm going to ask you a single question. Just one. If you answer correctly, I'll admit you're the genius you say you are. Deal?" Trump's expression brightened. Finally, some fairness. "Deal." Kimmel nodded. He took his time, making sure the silence stretched long enough for everyone to feel the suspense. Then, with the slow, deliberate tone of someone loading a trap, he asked, "Mr. President, can you explain what the First Amendment means?" The question hit like a hammer wrapped in velvet. Simple, gentle-sounding, but devastatingly sharp. Trump blinked. "What it means?" "Yes," Kimmel said. "You just read it. Now tell the American people, in your own words, what it actually means." Trump hesitated. He wasn't expecting that. He thought he'd be asked a riddle or a trivia question, something he could deflect or joke his way through. But this was different. "Well," Trump began slowly, "it's about, freedom. Big freedom. Very important freedom. The best kind of freedom." Kimmel nodded, pretending to take notes. "Okay, freedom. Can you be more specific?" "Of course," Trump said, straightening. "Freedom to, speak, to talk, and, religion. People can go to church or not go. Totally up to them. And, you can write things, too, in newspapers. I've done a lot with newspapers. Great relationships." Kimmel's eyebrows lifted slightly. "So, freedom of speech, religion, and the press?" "Exactly," Trump said, clearly relieved. "See, I told you. Genius." Kimmel smiled faintly. "And what about the right to assemble and petition the government?" Trump blinked again. "What?" "You know," Kimmel said gently, "the part you struggled to read a few minutes ago. The right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government. What does that mean?" Trump shifted uncomfortably. "Well, I mean, it's obvious. People can, gather peacefully, unless they're being unfair, and then maybe not peacefully, but generally peaceful. We like peace. Nobody loves peace more than me, except when it's unfair. Then not so much." The crowd broke into laughter again. Kimmel didn't join in. He just watched, silent, waiting. Trump, noticing the laughter, grew louder. "But look, you wouldn't understand, Jimmy. You've never run anything big. You host a talk show. I ran a country. That's a big deal, bigger than comedy." Kimmel smiled thinly. "You're right, I've never run a country, but I do understand what the First Amendment is. It's the reason you can say whatever you want, even when it doesn't make sense." The studio exploded with applause. It was the kind of line that would be replayed endlessly on every network highlight reel. Trump's expression hardened into a glare. "Oh, you think you're clever?" he said. "You're trying to make me look stupid. That's what you people do. You twist everything. You're fake news, Jimmy, you and your little writers." "Actually," Kimmel said, "this isn't fake news. It's live." The laughter doubled. Trump looked around, desperate for a lifeline. "You know, I've had tougher interviews than this. I've dealt with tougher people. World leaders, they all respect me. Jimmy, they call me all the time. Great calls, beautiful calls. They say, 'Sir, you're so smart.'" Kimmel smiled. "Who's they, Mr. President?" "You know, leaders, big ones, the biggest. Everyone respects me." Kimmel looked at him steadily. "Even Putin?" Trump froze for just a split second, long enough for the audience to notice. "Putin? I don't know him that well. I mean, we've talked. He respects strength. He respects power. I have both." Kimmel nodded. "And literacy?" The room erupted again. Trump's jaw dropped slightly, his face turning an even deeper shade of red. "That's not funny, Jimmy. You're a disgrace. This whole thing is a setup." Kimmel kept his voice calm. "No setup, Mr. President. You asked for an IQ test. I'm just giving you a fair one. Reading comprehension is part of it." Trump pointed a finger. "You know what? This is harassment. I'm being harassed on national television. People are going to hear about this. Everyone's going to hear about this." Kimmel spread his hands. "Well, that's kind of the point. Millions already are." The crowd cheered. Trump looked out over them, realizing there was no saving this moment. Every instinct told him to walk off the stage, to end the humiliation before it got worse. But he couldn't. Walking off meant losing, and Donald Trump didn't lose, at least not publicly. So he stayed. He forced a laugh, trying to turn the tables one last time. "You think you've got me, Jimmy. You don't. You know what? I still want that test. Let's bring out the doctors. Let's see who's the genius." Kimmel sighed dramatically. "Okay, fine. Let's make it official." He turned toward the audience. "Ladies and gentlemen, it seems we're about to witness something truly historic. The first live presidential IQ test ever attempted on television." The crowd went wild. Cameras zoomed in, producers scrambled, and somewhere in that chaos, Trump smiled again, convinced he was about to win back the room. But Kimmel wasn't done. He had one more question, one single, devastating question that would leave Trump utterly speechless. And when it came, it would take only 13 seconds to destroy the illusion completely. The stage was chaos disguised as order. Producers whispered frantically into earpieces. Cameramen shifted angles. The crowd buzzed with restless anticipation. Everyone could feel it. Something unforgettable was about to happen. Trump straightened his jacket, trying to regain his composure. His confidence flickered back, that familiar bravado creeping in, as if ego alone could erase the awkwardness of the last few minutes. He had convinced himself this was his moment, a grand comeback in front of millions. Kimmel turned back toward him, still calm, still collected. He didn't need to raise his voice. The silence itself was doing all the heavy lifting. "All right, Mr. President," Kimmel said. "You wanted a test. Let's have one. But no doctors, no cards, no buzzers. Just one question. You answer it right, and maybe I'll start believing you're the genius you say you are." Trump nodded, chin high. "Good. Finally, something fair." "Excellent," Kimmel said, stepping closer. The audience leaned forward. "Here it is." He paused, holding the silence for a full 3 seconds, long enough for every camera to lock in, for every viewer at home to hold their breath. Then he said it. "Mr. President, can you name the 5 freedoms guaranteed by the First Amendment?" It hit like a thunderclap. Trump blinked once, twice. His lips parted slightly. You could practically hear the gears in his mind grinding against each other. "The 5 freedoms?" he repeated slowly. Kimmel nodded. "Yes, there are 5. You just read the amendment yourself. Name them." The crowd went silent. Even the air seemed to pause. Trump cleared his throat. Well, freedom of speech, that's one. Everyone knows that. Correct, Kimmel said gently. 4 more. Trump smiled, relieved. Freedom of religion, that's 2. Big one, very important. Correct again, Kimmel replied. 3 to go. Trump hesitated, eyes darting toward the ceiling lights as if the answers might be written up there. Freedom of the press? That's 3, Kimmel said. You're on a roll. 2 more. Trump exhaled sharply. Okay, freedom to bear arms? A wave of laughter swept through the audience. Kimmel tilted his head. That's the Second Amendment, Mr. President. Trump frowned. Oh, sure, I knew that. Just testing you. Of course you were, Kimmel said, smiling faintly. 2 more. Trump paused again. He adjusted his tie, stalling for time. Let's see. There's freedom of the border. People talk about that a lot. Freedom to protect our borders? Laughter again, louder this time. Kimmel shook his head. No, sir. Try again. Trump's jaw tightened. Freedom to, drive, vote, make deals? Kimmel lowered his cards, stepping closer, his voice calm but cutting. Mr. President, the last 2 are freedom to assemble and freedom to petition the government. Trump blinked. That's what I said. The crowd erupted. The laughter this time wasn't nervous, it was open, uncontrollable. Even Kimmel's band was playing a low riff of mock suspense. Kimmel looked back toward the camera, suppressing a smile. Ladies and gentlemen, there you have it, the man who demanded an IQ test. Trump's face hardened. You're twisting my words again, Jimmy. Typical fake news behavior. You don't respect me, and you don't respect this country. Kimmel raised his hands innocently. I respect the Constitution. That's kind of what this was about. Trump leaned forward. You think you're so smart. Let's see how you do, huh? Why don't you name them? Kimmel turned to the audience almost sheepishly. Freedom of speech, religion, press, assembly, and petition. That's all 5. Pretty simple, right? The audience burst into applause. The sound rolled through the room like a wave, thunderous, undeniable. For the first time, Trump didn't interrupt. He didn't shout over it. He didn't even move. He just sat there, perfectly still, his lips pressed into a tight line, his eyes blank. 13 seconds. That's how long he stayed frozen. 13 seconds of silence broadcast to millions. 13 seconds that would be replayed endlessly, slowed down, captioned, dissected. 13 seconds that turned from awkwardness to history. Even the producers, usually whispering into their headsets, said nothing. They didn't need to. The moment spoke for itself. Kimmel finally broke the silence. His tone wasn't mocking, it was almost kind. You know, Mr. President, I think that's the first time we've ever had total silence from you. I'm going to cherish that. Laughter filled the room again, but it was softer now, tinged with awe. Kimmel leaned back, still smiling faintly. You know, this wasn't supposed to be a roast, but thank you for making it one. Trump blinked rapidly, searching for a comeback. You think you're funny? You're not funny. You're a lightweight. You don't understand success. I've built empires. You tell jokes. That's the difference. Kimmel shrugged. And yet, somehow, we're both on TV. Life's funny that way. The crowd roared. Trump forced a laugh, the strained, hollow kind that echoes when pride has been wounded. Yeah, real funny, he muttered. You'll see. Everyone's laughing now, but they'll see. Kimmel smiled politely, but his eyes said it all. This wasn't just a comedy moment anymore. It was something bigger, a moment that stripped away all pretense and showed the man behind the slogans. And the world? The world was watching every frame. As the cameras panned across the audience, people laughing, clapping, shaking their heads, one thing was clear. No one in that room would ever forget those 13 seconds. The test Trump demanded had backfired spectacularly, and Jimmy Kimmel, with a single calm question, had done what few interviewers ever could. He left Donald Trump completely, unmistakably stumped. When the cameras finally cut to commercial, the studio exhaled as one. Crew members scrambled, stage lights dimmed, and the audience broke into a mix of laughter, disbelief, and standing ovation. It was one of those rare television moments that everyone knew instantly would live forever. But at center stage, Donald Trump wasn't laughing. He sat rigidly, gripping the armrests of his chair like they might keep him from floating away. The smirk was gone. The color in his face had shifted from red to something between frustration and denial. Jimmy Kimmel, still on stage, leaned back in his chair and glanced toward the band. He didn't say much. He didn't have to. The silence after the laughter had its own kind of weight, the heavy kind that follows a knockout punch. When the cameras turned off, Kimmel stood, walked over to Trump, and extended his hand. "Good show, Mr. President. Hope you had fun." Trump hesitated. For a brief second, he seemed ready to shake, maybe even laugh it off. But then, with the faintest glare, he turned away. "It was rigged," he muttered. "Totally rigged. You people planned that." Kimmel smiled faintly. "That's what everyone says when they lose." Trump looked up sharply. "I didn't lose. You'll see. Everyone saw how unfair you were. They're all talking about it already." And he wasn't wrong about that. People were talking. Within minutes of the broadcast ending, clips flooded the internet. The words 13 seconds trended worldwide. Twitter, YouTube, TikTok, every platform lit up with the same loop. Trump frozen in silence, the camera zoomed in on his blank expression, the studio audience waiting for an answer that never came. Memes exploded. Someone slowed down the clip and added dramatic orchestra music. Another video showed Kimmel dropping the paper in slow motion with the words "IQ test failed" stamped across the screen. Late-night shows ran it on repeat. News outlets replayed it on every broadcast, calling it the most awkward moment in live TV history. CNN called it the IQ test heard around the world. Fox News tried to spin it differently. Kimmel ambushes Trump in unfair pop quiz. But the internet had already decided Trump had challenged the test and lost. Badly. Backstage, Trump's aides were in damage control mode. Phones rang nonstop. His communications director barked orders at a panicking staffer. "Get something on X right now. Call it fake, say it was edited, whatever. Just stop the bleeding." Meanwhile, Trump paced the hallway, muttering under his breath, "They're laughing now, but I'll show them. I'll take a real IQ test, a proper one, with real doctors, not some clown asking trick questions." A reporter from TMZ tried to catch him on his way out. "Mr. Trump, any comments on what happened tonight?" Trump didn't slow down. "What happened is fake. That question was unfair. Everyone says it. The crowd loved me. You saw it. Tremendous night." But the footage said otherwise. Every major news network replayed that same moment in a loop. Kimmel asking the question, Trump freezing, the 13 seconds of silence that followed. And those 13 seconds, they became a symbol, not just of an embarrassing TV moment, but of something deeper. The image of a man who demanded a test of genius and found himself failing a test of humility. Back at Kimmel's studio, the team celebrated the episode like they'd just made television history. The segment producer high-fived one of the writers. "That's going to break the internet." Kimmel wasn't celebrating, though. He sat quietly at his desk, watching the replay. Even he seemed stunned at how it had unfolded. His co-producer leaned over. "You planned that question?" Kimmel shook his head. "Not exactly. I had a few options written down, but when he demanded an IQ test, I just went with it. It felt right." He leaned back, watching Trump's silence play on screen again. "You can't script that kind of television," he said softly. "You just let the truth happen." The next morning, every headline in America screamed the same story. Trump stumped on live TV. IQ test backfires in front of millions. 13 seconds of silence that shook the internet. Kimmel's question goes viral. A president's IQ meltdown. Even international outlets picked it up. In London, a morning show called it the greatest unscripted moment since Brexit. In Australia, a commentator quipped, "You don't need an IQ test when the answer is silence." Within 24 hours, the clip hit 50 million views. By the end of the week, it had passed 100. Comment sections overflowed with every reaction imaginable: laughter, disbelief, anger, and memes that would live on for months. Trump, meanwhile, doubled down. He posted on Truth Social that Kimmel had been unprofessional and dishonest, insisting that he had aced the test and that the crowd went wild with applause. He even claimed that many people are calling it the best interview ever done. But the footage told a different story. Every time someone replayed that 13-second pause, it wasn't admiration they saw. It was the unmistakable face of a man realizing in real time that the stage he built had turned against him. Days later, Kimmel addressed it again on his show. Standing before a cheering audience, he smiled modestly. "You know, I didn't set out to make anyone look bad," he said. "He asked for an IQ test. I gave him one question. That's all it took." The audience roared with applause. He shrugged. "I guess sometimes the truth really does speak for itself, or in this case, doesn't speak at all." Laughter filled the room again, but this time it felt lighter, like the storm had passed. Meanwhile, Trump's team scrambled to distract from the viral moment. They booked new interviews, staged rallies, and flooded social media with counter-narratives. But the clip wouldn't die. It was everywhere, in highlight reels, parodies, even classroom discussions about the power of public image. One journalist summed it up perfectly in a viral tweet. Trump demanded a test of intelligence. Kimmel gave him a test of honesty, and for 13 seconds, the mask slipped. Even weeks later, people were still talking about it. Late-night monologues, podcasts, op-eds, everyone had their take. The moment had become cultural shorthand for arrogance meeting reality. And in the quiet corners of the internet, people kept replaying it. Those 13 seconds of silence, that single camera shot of Trump's stunned expression. Because it wasn't just funny, it was revealing, it was human, it was history. A leader, a comedian, and a test that nobody saw coming, and yet everyone remembered. As the clip faded to black, one final quote flowed across the screen in countless fan edits and remixes. He demanded a test of genius and failed the simplest question of all.